When there's a pandemic, you can expect to find an urgent push for a vaccine. That's happening right now with COVID-19, and one of the efforts is based in the Boston area, the COVE research trials by the biotechnology company Moderna. These are currently in stage 3 with collaboration from Brigham and Women's Hospital. Joining us is our guest from the hospital, also an instructor in infectious disease at Harvard Medical School, is Dr. Stephen Walsh. Thank you very much for being with us, Doctor.
Thanks, it's an honor to be here.
Dr. Boston is such a hotbed of medical research. There is one other effort that's going on that you're also involved in at the hospital. Is that correct?
Yes, so the Brigham and Women's Hospital is a site for the Moderna phase 3 study. That's the study that's been in the news a lot lately with tens of thousands of participants already enrolled. Just started last week nationally is a study run by a British drug company called AstraZeneca. That's been also called the Oxford vaccine because it was developed by researchers at Oxford University. Our partner site at the Fenway Health Institute right on Boylston Street is one of the sites that's participating in that study as well.
Well, I think one of the most important things for any study is you've got to have a pool of people taking part in clinical trials. And it has to be, I've seen the word global, and people here, we don't normally think of global right away, but why is global important and what exactly does that mean?
Well, the pandemic is everywhere on planet Earth. There's been very, very few countries that haven't been affected by the coronavirus this year. And as long as there's coronavirus somewhere, all of us are at risk. At this point, we don't think that we're going to be able to stomp the virus into extinction like we did with the first SARS coronavirus back in the early 2000s. We're expecting that we're going to have to live with this virus for a long, long time. And the communities that have been disproportionately affected by coronavirus are strikingly, strikingly similar from country to country. It's been minority populations, it's been disadvantaged populations, it's been communities where the healthcare services aren't reaching as effectively. And that's been true in Western Europe, the US, Canada, and we're seeing outbreaks in Brazil and South Africa now as well.
Well, one of the things that occurs to me trying to think globally here is that if a vaccine doesn't work with certain groups of people, then that in a way could be a problem for everybody. Isn't that true?
Correct. We want to make sure that in the studies, we're enrolling a broadly representative population. We want study volunteers who look like the country as a whole, but knowing that we're reaching out into communities that are at higher risk is just as important. And so we're looking for individuals who live in some of the higher prevalence zip codes here in the Boston area. We're looking for individuals who work retail jobs, who are custodians, as well as healthcare workers, because we want to make sure that the vaccine works for everybody. Because again, as long as there's COVID somewhere, everyone else is at risk.
Well, you mentioned a little earlier that this vaccine, at least the one that's being worked on by Moderna, it doesn't really destroy the virus as much as disable it. So what does that mean for a person who's taking part in the trial?
So the vaccine that Moderna has developed is what's called an RNA vaccine. Going back to high school biology, the RNA that is injected is taken up by muscle cells. And then what it is it's the instructions for building coronavirus's spike protein. So your muscle cells are effectively the vaccine. It's like having the instructions for a Lego set. The disassembled Legos don't look like much, but if you follow the instructions, you might be able to get a TIE fighter or the Millennium Falcon if you follow the instructions correctly. Then, once your muscle cells have made the spike protein, your immune system responds to it because it's a foreign protein. This step we know from the phase 1 study works very, very well. Participants in the phase 1 study had good antibody responses after the second shot. What we don't know is, are those antibodies protective? And that's the point of the phase 3 study that we're doing now, looking for individuals at risk of both COVID infection and bad outcomes if they get COVID. And that's how we'll find out if it works.
And of course, with any believable clinical trial, you got to have a lot of people getting a placebo so you can make a comparison, right?
Correct. This study does have a 50-50 ratio, so it's essentially a coin flip, whether participants get a vaccine or a placebo. We don't know which, and they don't know which. It's a double-blind study until we get to the point when we find out if the vaccine works or not. At that point, we're expecting to be unblinded so that we can, let everybody know what we find and then proceed from there.
What about what's required for somebody taking part in the study as far as either risk or the time involved, the trips you might have to make?
Yeah, so we have most of the activities take place on the Brigham's main campus, just on the side of Mission Hill in the Longwood area. We do have a satellite clinic at the Southern Jamaica Plain Health Center on Center Street, which is able to see people on some days of the week. And I'm actually at a satellite clinic right now in Chestnut Hill, where we've been inviting participants with cars to be able to come, given that there's free parking and less traffic congestion here than there is in the Longwood medical area. We try to keep the visits as short as we can. We really do respect people's time, and we want the experience to be pleasant and not burdensome. The first visit tends to be a little longer because we have to talk about the vaccine in detail. We have to go through all the study procedures first. And then if the participant is interested, we sign what we call an informed consent document. It's basically a 22-page permission slip to go ahead with the study. Then we go through their medical history. We do a physical exam. If everything checks out, then we're able to randomize them, which means the pharmacy can start preparing either vaccine or placebo, whichever the computer that flipped the coin tells them to prepare. And then we have a modest blood draw and a nasopharyngeal swab, which not everybody enjoys, but it's important to make sure that people don't have COVID at the time of vaccination. The vaccine itself goes in one of the arm muscles, like most other vaccines do. And what we've found is that a fair number of participants have some arm pain for a day or two after the vaccination. And a very small number, maybe 10% or so, feel like they're coming down with a cold, kind of a blah, fatigue and achy syndrome. Those are actually pretty typical for other vaccines. So what we're hoping is that the side effects from this vaccine are going to be similar to other vaccines. Maybe more than a flu shot, but maybe in the ballpark of some of the other vaccines that people find a little annoying, but ultimately tolerable. And then follow-up.
A vaccine can be. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say the follow-up visits. We do have a booster shot in a month. And then we follow people periodically. And most importantly, we want the participants to let us know if they think they have any COVID symptoms, because Then we're going to bring them in and find out by doing more nasopharyngeal swabs if they have COVID or not. Since the endpoint of the study is COVID infections, we want to make sure that we catch every case as fast as we can.
Well, people might have some individual reasons for wanting to take part in the trials, but beyond that, what would you say to somebody about motivating them to participate?
We're looking for individuals who are motivated by altruism. We're looking for people who have seen what COVID has done to their communities, to their coworkers, to their friends, to their families, and are interested in helping to stop the virus from spreading. It is ultimately a study, and we don't know if the participants will benefit or not. But a vaccine really is our only way out of the pandemic, and we're looking for people who want us to help put an end to the travel restrictions, the masks, the sheer number of people who are getting sick and dying every day from COVID.
Finally, we should mention briefly, if people do want to get more information about participating, what's the best next step?
So our national network has a website called coronaviruspreventionnetwork.org. It's very long, but it's all spelled out like that as one word, coronavirusnetwork.org. Our Brigham one is a lot shorter, bwhvaxx.org, bwhvax.org.
Thank you very much for walking us through that.
Thanks for having us.
Dr. Stephen Walsh from Brigham and Women's Hospital.